Hello everyone, welcome back to MixbusTv. I hope you're having a great day. Another round of rapid fire Q&A. You guys like the series so much, so we're gonna keep doing. You keep coming with the great questions on Instagram, YouTube comments, Facebook. Before we start, check the info box down below for my mixing courses, exclusive discounts and deals on plugins. If you want to support the channel, we have t-shirts. Let's get to the question by Vin Karume. What should guide me when selecting a MixBus compressor, and what would be the best use in terms of settings? Thanks. Obviously, the answer again is depends, but I can give you a couple of guidelines. So I'm talking about wideband compressor, okay? So no multiband. Let's get the usual suspects. So West Audio Dion, my new heritage successor, great 2bus compressors, API 2500, so many other. Manly. So wideband compressor. Obviously, settings do depend on the song. But if we look at the famous bus compressors, they don't vary that much, okay? Especially the classic. I think, for example, for me, my West Audio Dion, which has been my main 2bus compressor for a long time, the attack either is 10 or 30. That's it. Very few times I go faster than that. The release is usually all the way fast or one notch slower, which is in this case 0.3. As for threshold and release, this is really style of mixing, more than genre depending. I'm the kind of guy that doesn't do more than 4 dB of gain reduction usually on my 2bus, but I also have a saturator in front of it, which, because of the saturation byproduct, it will probably knocks down 1 or 2 dB of dynamic range, you know, before hitting the compressor. So overall, I could say I'm pretty heavy-handed with my 2bus processing. In fact, if I start mixing in my 2bus chain and you take the 2bus chain away, the mix kind of fall apart. Not that I cannot mix without it, but if I mix without it and you take it away, it's not gonna sound the same, nowhere near. For the ratio, I do like to go either 4:1 or 1.5. This is genre depending. So hip hop, EDM, rock, metal, so the modern, more common genres, I usually shoot for 4:1. That's my default ratio. For ballads, for slower tracks, for ambient, for soundtracks, or sometimes even other genres, but generally I don't go in between. I go like either 4 or 1.5, because are two completely different kind of approaches. The 4:1 ratio, personally, I use it when I want to hit that compressor hard. I turn it up very early in the mix, and I mix into it. I push into it. I want to hear it. I want to hear the tone. I want to hear the action. I want to do the changes that I do on my groups and tracks, also according to what the compressor does and how it reacts. So a 1.5, sure, you can hear it, but you definitely cannot hear it as much as a 4.1. So it's the mindset, like how aggressive I want this track to sound. So for me, the guide is that I want this track to punch, to hit hard, to have that, not pumping because I don't like pumping on 2bus, but that push and pull that the compressor does on the 2bus. Then it's 4.1, and it hits the mix not at all times. Okay, so it's like the chorus, the bridge if it's loud, a passage that is particularly loud, and that's not considering the automation on the master bus, either before or after compressor. So static mix, as in with the automation done, but not automation on the 2bus. So 4.1, I'm hitting the mix, let's say at about 60% of the time the compressor is working at full power, so anywhere between 2 and 6 dB, averaging a 3.4. But for the 1.5 ratio, the concept, it's different. I want the compressor to always work. One word that you hear next to the SSL style compressor is glue, right? And that is true. Like even a 4.1, you tame the dynamics enough so that kind of glues the mix together. It's not like too wild. But also, that is not just the gain reduction. The glue factor is also the color of the SSL, the stereo image, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But for me, when I use 1.5, the term glue is more appropriate, if it makes sense. For example, with the successor, granted that the color of the compressor is amazing, so it just glues things just by running material through it. You saw the review. But the 1.5 ratio, basically for me, what I'm aiming for is for the compressor to work on the track at all times. So it's not like the verse maybe it's not hitting at all, probably like with the SSL of 4.1, but it's hitting the mix at all times just with such a low ratio that it actually, for me, the terms is appropriate. It glues it together. Okay, so even the highest passages, they are still dynamic because you're only at 1.5. So the ratio is so low, even if the material exceeds the threshold, it's not gonna be knocked down by 4 dB to 1, okay? It's just 1.5. It just reduces it a little bit. So for me, that is my mindset is that, like, for me, 1.5 is like a gentle leveler more than a punchy, glue aggressive kind of 2-bus compressor. Also 1.1, because again, it's more transparent and the curve is different. I can use probably a faster attack. I would not say without losing punch, because when you use faster attacks, you do lose a little bit of punch. But again, it's so low of a ratio that it kind of smooth out the mix. So I don't see it and I don't hear it as, oh, I'm losing punch. I'm making it smoother and, you know, softer and more, it flows better, if that makes sense. Other guides for when selecting a MixbusTv compressor would be what kind of color do you want, of course. API has a different kind of color than an SSL style. The Dione, totally different than the Heritage successor or the Drummer. So again, for 2-bus compressor, the more common are VCA, opto compressors, which I'm not a fan on 2-bus, nor in mastering, and people will cringe at it. Not in mastering either. VCA, FET, opto, and I will put diode bridge too, because now it's one of my favorites. So based on the topology and the track, you need to learn what the topology sounds like and react like. So FET are colored, are pretty fast, while VCAs are more transparent, more punchy, more crisp. Diode bridge are super colored, creamy compressors. Opto do have this natural curve and natural behavior. They're pretty transparent as well. Remember, not all opto are tubes. There can be opto that are not tubes, so they can also be very transparent. They tend to be slower, while FET tend to be really fast. VCA are quite fast too. So you need to learn the topology of the compressor and then list in your head the characteristics that it has, get familiar with them, and then pick the style for a given song. So these are the things. One thing, another guide would be what in this mix, what you want to control. Is the low end out of control, or is the vocals, which you shouldn't fix with 2-bus compressor, but some tracks is just the nature of it, you know, and hip hop trap beat or song will be bass heavy. Ballad will be vocals driven. A metal song will be guitar driven. So the nature of the song. And at that point, you pick a compressor that either enhances a certain range or helps you tame it. If it's an electronic EDM mix that is super bright because the sounds, the synths, the samples were super bright, then something like the Heritage that is very creamy will help you with the tone, not just with the dynamics. So there are so many things to keep in consideration when selecting a 2-bus compressor. And lastly, I would say sidechain, internal sidechain, which is so important for me. Like, I literally select my compressor, my 2-bus compressors, almost based on that, not alone, but it's like 50% of that. So for example, the Dion, one of the reasons because I got it like years back is because it had the usual HPF filters and then the API thrust style internal sidechain filters, which changes the compressor behavior and the color of it, believe it or not, completely. Same for the successor, the sidechain filter that has the HPF, the 2 HPF settings, and the mid focus changes the compressor so much. Same for the tone shaping drummer. So internal sidechain is definitely something that you should keep in mind when selecting a 2-bus compressor. This was a lot longer than I thought for being a rapid fire Q&A, but you know I love compressors, so I tend to talk a lot. But if you liked the video, please don't forget to leave a like. I hope it was useful. Leave your questions for the next round of rapid fire Q&A and the live Q&A coming up in the comment down below. Before you leave, check the info box down below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time.